In today's video, we are going to talk about the formula effector and how it functions, and we will see how we will use it to recreate some of the effectors in Cinema 4D's Mograph menu. Hi guys, my name is Kobe and welcome to Pixel Affair. Let's get into Cinema 4D and see how we will do that. So I've created this matrix which has a count of 20 on the X, right? And let's go ahead and apply the formula effector. So with the matrix selected, if I come to Mograph, Effectors, and I choose formula, you can see something is happening. It has changed the scale and the position of the matrix. If I hit play, you can see it's playing back and forth, right? Now let's go into the parameters and you can see position on X is set to 50 and scale also is set to -1, and all this is being controlled by a formula which has been input in here. So it's basically being controlled by this formula. So if I go ahead and select the formula, everything, and clear it, you can see now nothing happens. If I hit play, nothing happens, even though the parameters like all these values are still here. So everything that you do with the formula effector is based on the formula that you can input in here. And if you know your math, you can go ahead and create your own effector like the way you want it. So for now, let's come in here and let me uncheck scale, put this one to 0, and maybe set the position Y to 100 for now. Nothing happens though. But if we come into our formula effector, and in the formula I type just the number 1, see what happens. It moves everything upwards, and now it's moving everything upwards 100 centimeters. And just by typing in just this number 1, we've literally created the plane effector. So what's happening is that this number 1 is multiplying whatever value we input in here. So if I should increase it, it's like multiplying it by this 1. So just by typing it 1, we've created plane effector. So if I should duplicate the matrix, so I'll select the matrix and drag it, hold Control to drag it to duplicate it, and now I'll come into its effectors and delete the formula. If I simply select this second matrix and come to Mograph Effectors and add a plane effector, you can see it has moved it to the same position. So you can see, let me change the formula position so that you can see now it's moving it out. So we've literally created the plane effector, and you can use the formula now, can add linear fields and stuff, and basically it's the plane effector that we've created. So I can go ahead and delete the plane and the other matrix I created. So I'll delete it and delete the field as well. So if I select the formula, come to the effectors, I can clear the one. You can actually input any number and it will sort of duplicate it. It's like a multiplier. Whatever number you put it here will be multiplied to the value you set here in your parameter. So for now, let's actually delete it. And now you can create other, you see we have variables in here, so you can input all these variables. But if we right click and go to show help, you can see it will bring us here to the formula effector stuff. But if we come down here to the appendix, you can see we have formula, and this one gives us the mathematical operators that we can use in the formula effector, right? Or if you don't find, you can actually type the formula in the search button here to find it. So all this one gives us the mathematical operators you can use. So in here you can see we have RND, which is random, right? So let's go ahead and see how we will use it to randomize our clone. So I'll come in here and type RND, and nothing happens. And that's because we have to add the number that we want to use as a multiplier. So if I should add 1, you can see now it starts randomizing our matrix, right? But that is not the appropriate way to do it. So I'll put it into bracket, or say parenthesis, right? And now group it, and now you can see we have our random. But one thing we have to do is that, because probably you'll be changing your scene and stuff like that, it will be good to have a seed so that it will be kept within the seed. So if I come here and put a semicolon, you can type in 1 2 3 4 5, and just by doing this, you've literally created your random effector. So let's do the same thing. If I should select the matrix and drag it down, come into our effector, Mograph Effectors, and choose actually let me delete the effector in this one, the formula effector in this one, and now come to Mograph Effectors, random, you can see we've randomized our matrix as well. But the difference in this one is that, let me actually move the matrix up. You see, the difference in this one is that none of them comes down, like comes beyond the base where the matrix are. And that's because in the formula effector, when you come to the effector and see the min and max, the minimum is set to 0, so you can never go beyond 1, right? So that means you have to set it to minus. So now it will go beyond 1. Just like in the random effector, if you check the min and max, the min is set to minus 100. The only thing is that the randomness will be a bit different because, you know, it's using probably different values and stuff. But literally, we've created our random effectors just by doing this simple inputting in this simple values. And because we added the seed, we can simply come in here and change the seed. So like, let's see this one to 5, and you can see the randomness has changed. Let me actually delete the first random, this the 2, because you see in the random, let me show you, have a seed value here which you can change to change our randomness. That's what we've literally created with the formula. So let me delete them, and in the formula you can see if we change our seed value to any number, you know, the randomness keeps changing. So basically that's it. Let me delete, let me clear the formula. I have everything deleted, and now we have only the matrix again. So let's go ahead and add the formula effector. So I come to my Mograph effectors, and I'll choose the formula, right? It's applying the old formula again. So we'll go ahead and clear it, and like we did in the parameters, we will uncheck the scale and set the position to 100 again, so that will clear this one. Nothing happens like initially. So now the next thing is, let's come into the effector tab, and you can see we have variables, and in the variables it tells us the variables you can input in here, and among them we have ID, which is the object index, right? So if we come into select our matrix and come to transform, can change the display to index, and let's actually change the color to something darker. So you can see every matrix has a number. Let me filter out, take off the word plane. So every matrix has a number. So the first one is 0, and the last one is 19, making them 20, right? Basically. So now what's happening is that if I come to my formula and type in index ID, right, you can see what's happening is that it's multiplying this value by the index. So it's multiplying 100. Let me actually make it 10 so that we see. It's multiplying 100 by 10 by 0, and it's giving us 0, so it's not moving. Now 1 by 10, it's moving by 10 centimeters, and so on. So the last one. So that's what it's basically doing. All right. We can also use it to separate one particular object. So for instance, if I say index is equal to, say, 2, right? So now the index will select the number which has the ID of 2, and that will be equal, it will be true. So we have a value of 1 times what we have here, which is y. So now you can increase it, even come into the rotation, and everything that we do apply to only this particular matrix. And you can actually use it in your normal Mograph stuff to separate one particular object to move it in a certain way, right? You can change it to any number, or you can say even index is greater than 4, right? And it means that every number after 4 will be controlled, and the rest, or you can even do less than, and all is in the operation mathematical operators that it gives us. So you can see the mathematical operators, the units, and everything that we can use in here, the formulas that we can use basically. So I'll go ahead and delete the greater than and the 4, so that we'll be left with the ID, and I'll come into the formula parameters, and I'll make even the y 100, and I'll check rotation, right? So what I want to do is that I want the last clone to stay 100, so that we'll go as far as 100 centimeters, so that it will start from 0 to 100 centimeters. All the clones will fall within that range. But now it's multiplying all the index, so it's going way up there, right? So how do we do that? I simply come into the effector. We can say divided and the last clone is what I want, right? And that the last clone, based on the index that we know, let's actually show. The last clone has an index of how do you call it, 19, right? So we can simply divide it by 19, and now the last clone will stay within the how do you call it, the 100 centimeters, will be at 100 centimeters, right? Because 19 divided by 19, that's 1, and times 100 gives us 100. So the last clone will be 9. But the issue comes when I increase the clones, right? And now you can see the last clone is no more 19, it's 22, right? So that's where the issue comes, and now it's dividing it, so it's the last clone will still go up. So to do that, what you can input in here is that we go into the formula effector, and we, instead of, where is the formula, and come to the effector, instead of inputting the number exactly, we can actually, you can see in the variable we have object count, so we can input in the object count. So you can just type in count, so id divided by count, and now it's counting the whole clones and dividing it by the id, right? But the issue is that we want the last clone to stay 100, not the, and the last clone is not 20, because the whole clones are 20 and the last clone is 19, right? And you always want the last clone. So how do we always get the last clone? And that means you have to subtract 1, right? Always subtract 1, because it's counting from 0 to 19, so we get 20. So always subtract 1 from the last from the count. So if I do -1, it wouldn't work. That, and the reason is it will multiply as in it will do the division first before the subtraction, right? Like if, like basic or primary mathematics of board mass, like that bracket operation, division, and multiplication, addition before subtraction. So for us to make the one work, we have to put it in bracket or parentheses, right? So I'll say put a parenthesis here and here. So what will happen is that it will consider the count minus 1 first, then divide it by the id, and now the last matrix will always stay in 100 centimeters. So now if I should come into my matrix and increase it, always it will stay within the 100 centimeters. And this is basically how the linear this is basically how the step effector functions, right? So let me actually set the clones to 20, right? And let me go ahead and duplicate this matrix. I'll come in here and clear the formula, and I'll go again to our Mograph effectors, and I'll choose the step effector. It's scaling it. You don't want scale, you want to move it on the y 100 centimeters, and you can see it's gone in to fit exactly the same thing. So I can actually move the face matrix, and you can see we have the same thing. So that's basically how the step effector functions as well. So I'll go ahead and delete the step and the matrix again, and come into the formula, the effector, and I'll clear the whole thing. So we are back to square one again. Let me actually bring back this one to 0, right? Now let's go back into the formula in the effector and type in T, right? And if we hit play, you can see it's moving upwards. And just by typing in T, we've literally created the time effector as well. Now if you come into the variable, you can see we have T, and T is equal to the project time, right? And let me actually show you. Control D and come into our project settings. You can see time, the frames per second is 30. So every second, let me go back into the formula. Every second, right, every 30 frames is equal to 1, right? And now 1 times 100 is centimeters. So every 30 every 30 frames will move 100 centimeters, right? So we'll move gradually every 30 frames. So 60 will be 2, so it continues just like that. So just like just typing in T, we've literally created the time effector. But with this, we can actually even increase our, so this one is like a multiplier. All right, so now if we can speed it up, or we can go ahead and do it in the parameters tab as well. So basically, we've created a time effector, and we can use some of the formulas. So for instance, we can use some of these formulas here to actually control our time. So for, I can come with my formula, I can come in here and type in the RND, which is the random RND, and I'll put the T in a bracket, right? So now if we hit play, you can see now the time has been randomized, right? Basically, we can use something different, maybe let's see sin, sin in black, and hit play. You can see something is happening, but it's not moving. Let's get closer. You can see it's not really moving upwards. So we can now multiply our time, multiply it by, let's say, 100, and hit play, and you can see it's giving us the sign moving up and down. Let's actually increase the frames, going up and down. We can simply also come in here and actually I'll add the randomness to it. So I'll type in the I'll put it in a parenthesis, and I'll R N D, and I'll close the whole parenthesis again. I'll put all of them in bracket, and now let's hit play to see. You can see now it's randomly playing all of them. You can do so many things, like for instance, let's actually clear everything and put in the T again, and look at one of these either trunk, round, or so I'll use the truncate. So we want to truncate the number so that our formula effector, the movement of the values, it moves like jitter from just 30 straight to 60, that kind of way. Like, let's actually demonstrate what I'm talking about. So I'll type in TRUNC, because that's the name. So T, trunk, right? And I'll put into bracket the T. So trunk in bracket the T, the time. And now let's actually, if we hit play, you can see it always stays there, and it always moves. What's happening is that it's using whole numbers, so it's trunking it. You can actually change it from trunk to something like, let's see, round. And let me actually check the round and hit play, and it always give us round numbers. So moves like it will be jittering. It will always give us round numbers. So that's basically there are several things that you can do, I mean, playing around. So if you know your math, you can actually go ahead and create your own special effector for your Mograph stuff, and it can be interesting if you have time for it. So that's basically about the formula effector, and it's really powerful, but it's underrated tool, I'll say. There are several things that we can do, but that will be long. So if you have time, you can explore it on your own or by yourself. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please, if you like it, kindly subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.